Hey everyone, this is Kathleen Clemons. In this first video, I want to show you how I add textures manually without adding an additional plugin software to do so. So let's get started. I shot this photo of cosmos in my garden, and I loved the flower, the dancing petals. I love the curve of the stem, but the background is very plain, and I know that adding a texture will add some interest back there, and I'd like to add a little color, so I'll be choosing a texture that has pink tones. So the texture that I'm going to use for this one is my rose painting texture. Now I have resized these images both to 8 by 12 just to make things easier, but when you're going to manually apply a texture, it will save you time if you resize your texture to match the size of your photo. So I have them both open on my desktop, and you may need to go into Photoshop and stop using tabs and allow your photos to float in Photoshop so that you can open more than one image at a time. Let me show you. If you go to Photoshop, Preferences, Workspace, you'll see that I do not have tabs selected, and I have Enable Floating Document Window Docking enabled. And that will allow you to be sure that you can have two photos open at the same time. So let's cancel that. All right, so I have both of them open. I'm going to select my Move tool and hold the Shift key down, and that will ensure that the texture will line up directly on top of my photo. So there it goes. And I can close this one. Now you can see the texture, but you can't see the original photo. So you come over to Opacity and start pulling that down slowly until you have it just where you want it. Now I don't want the texture to become a main subject, so I want it a little more subtle than that, but I think around 48 to 50% would be just right. Okay, let's do a before and after, and you can see that I got the warmth that I want and I got the added interest that I want. Now I'll need to mask the texture off of the flower itself, and I'll be showing you that in the next video. But in the meantime, I want to add a texture to another photo so that you see the process more than once. Okay. Now I shot this photo in the fog, and I loved the simplicity of it, but I think adding a very subtle texture, something with brush strokes, would add some additional interest to this. So I'm going to choose the Syrinx texture from Flypaper Textures Spring Painterly collection. And again, I'll choose my Move tool, hold the Shift key down, drag that texture over. Now I can close this one up, and I'll come over to my Layers palette, click on the opacity, and start slowly pulling this down. There, now you can see that I don't have all that much color showing, but I love the brush strokes. And again, I'll have to mask the texture off of this, and that will be coming up in video 2. If you have any questions about this process for adding a texture manually, you can contact me at kathleenclemons@me.com. And now we'll move on to masking in video 2.